Welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark, and this is my favorite show to do because I've got my man, Alex Sanfilippo, in the house. How are you doing, Alex?
Trent, Coach Trent, man, it is so great to be with you today, man. We've gotten to know each other the last, a couple of years at this point. It's just been a blast getting to know you, and honored to be here. This is like a dream for me, so thanks so much for having me.
Man, honor to have you, brother. Am I saying your name anywhere close to right? Give it to me.
I think you said it. Say it again. I'm pretty sure you said it right.
Alex Sanfilippo.
Yeah, Sanfilippo. I mean, no one ever gets it. I just figured you've been practicing in the mirror for weeks, but good for you.
Well, I did practice for an hour and a half before the show.
Okay, cool.
So,
all right.
yeah. So for everybody, thank you for joining us on the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host, Trent Clark. I am the CEO of Leadershipity. I am also a partner in athletic influencer marketing, and I am a worldwide speaker on teams, global impact, leadership development, and team development. And most people know me because I coached in professional baseball for 13 seasons and 3 World Series. And so, Alex, I almost lost you there. Did you see that? Dang, dude, I almost lost you again. My camera, a little frisky today, brother. So tell me a little bit about Alex. Let's get to know you a little bit because you're a Jacksonville guy, Florida guy, and still in Florida, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was actually born and raised here, and I'm still here. I actually fell in love with the city. So as an adult, because I always thought I'd leave. I don't know. Maybe every kid feels that way. They're like, I'm out of here.
I felt that way. Yeah.
I traveled around for a bit and actually realized, I'm like, actually, I think I've got something really sweet here. So I've just moved consistently closer to the ocean. Let's put it that way.
Nice.
So,
yes. Yeah, and there's so many good areas down there. Especially, I've been down to I spoke at the PGA Center down south.
Yeah,
of you, right?
yeah.
Unbelievable, that ocean front there. It's just gorgeous and some of the best walks I've ever taken in my life.
Oh, for sure. I'll tell you what, the actual like the Players Championship, when that is in town, that is my golf is not my favorite sport, but that sporting event is by far my favorite. I love going to that. I never miss it.
Nice. Love it. So for those who are joining us for the first time on the Winners Find a Way show, I bring in 1%ers. I bring in people that are going to talk about the hard things. If you are currently going through a challenge, you are looking to become elite. I don't care if you're a business owner, a coach, an athlete, a student, and you want to take it to the next level. I think this is the place for you. And after hearing Alex, you're going to know why, because you're going to get some nuggets out of here today that are fabulous. Alex, tell people before we start where they can find you.
Yeah, so everything I do is at PodPros.com. PodPros.com. I'm full on. Everything I do is podcasting, and that's where you can kind of see that. I don't think we're going to talk about that too much today, but that's where I'm at now. So PodPros.com. I'm easily accessible there, but you can find everything I'm doing right there.
I think people are going to want me to talk about podcasting because it's such a hot topic, right?
It really is.
It's like, hey man, should I do a podcast? Should I be doing this? You and I both have podcasts. Yours is, of course, is a lot better than mine, of course. But
I don't know, man. I don't. I was just talking about this. So I listen to your podcast. So that's why I was saying it's like a dream to be here because I listen to it. I will be honest. When this episode comes out, I will probably skip it and I will listen to the one after it. But I don't necessarily want to listen to myself. Be like, ooh, Alex, that's so good. But I was listening to one recently because everything we do is like customer focused, member focused, as we call it. You had an interview with Don Williams. It was actually a 2-part about romancing your customer. If you are listening to this and you have not heard that one, go back and find the one called Romancing Your Customer with Don Williams. That was an incredible interview. I learned a lot from, and I really resonate with that. So you're just doing a great job with the show.
Well, listen, man, if I got a chance to teach you something, the master, I feel pretty good about that right there. And Don Williams is an all-star. So fellow EO member and fellow believer, brother.
Yeah.
And so I love him, and he's a great dude. For you, let's talk about this because the one thing I love about you, and I've got 5 children, but you were a homeschooler. You came up through the ranks, and tell us why you got into homeschooling. Why was that important to your parents?
Yeah, so maybe it wasn't, but thank God I had really great parents, and I still have really great parents, I should say. They're still with me, thankfully.
Nice. Yeah.
But at a really young age, it came like I was in school, like trying to figure out how to read and write, and I was just much slower than the other kids when it came to that. And eventually, finally, somebody who was a teacher pointed out, they're like, hey, I don't know this for sure because I'm not a doctor, but Alex has tendencies that I find in dyslexic kids. And so anyway, I got tested, whatever all that involves. Turns out I was like very severely dyslexic as a kid. And I really struggled to read and write. And thankfully, my mom, being the gracious woman she is, decided that she's going to teach me. And I had some external teachers and some specialists and stuff like that. And thankfully, over time, I mean, I just believe like, I'm a believer. We talked about that, right? I just believe I got a healing from God. And I'm very thankful for that because eventually I overcame that, which most people don't. They carry that their whole lives.
Yes.
But for a long time, I was very behind. I remember being like 12 years old and still really struggling to read and to write, which that's just too old to be struggling with that, right? So my whole upbringing in when it comes to homeschool, I was always like trying my hardest. And that's one thing I'll say about myself. I work really hard, but I would always end up like the best I could get when I worked my hardest was probably a C average grade. And I just kind of suffered my way through it, if you will. But yeah, that was my upbringing. I'm thankful for it. But that was the reason I was homeschooled.
Well, I tell you, it's a little bit, for myself, I have a 24-year-old. He's my first homeschooler. And so back then, of course, and this is now 20 years ago almost, right? When we started, we were looked at like, man, you weirdos, what are you doing with your kid?
Right.
And it's so interesting because here, my wife and I both have teaching degrees, right? So we both had certifications to teach people, and we were going to teach our kid, right? And I remember we'd had children at home and they're like, whoa, what are you guys doing? You're crazy. I'm like, everybody had a child at home 100 years ago, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, this isn't a new concept, right? And so it's interesting how we get things in our mind. And our story on homeschool is very interesting because our number one was a superstar. Just he was reading it almost, at 4. Like he was reading fast. And then my number 2, he's got these learning disabilities. He's got these challenges. So they're both progressing in very different ways. And we need to bring special learning circumstances to both, because the one would be totally bored in his class because he's killing kids. And then the other one needs some special needs stuff to get him going to learn a different way. And it's funny that you say this because my number 2, who had all those challenges, is the hardest worker I know, right? Like the kid can bring it, man. He can absolutely work. So
yeah,
love that. So what this is so interesting to me because you learn how to be this student, right? And then you go to university, but you find out it's not for you, but yet you become an aerospace engineer executive, right? Like I need to understand how that gap, because no one's thinking like, oh, school dropout to aerospace executive. Walk me through that, brother.
Yeah. So I started going to school, but at this like college, I mean, and I knew that I had just just suffered through high school, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to be good at this. And I didn't mean to have like a defeated mindset. I just knew that the struggles that came with it and what I was signing up for. Again, being a hard worker, I knew I wanted to do that. But at the same time, real estate was looking real sexy. I mean, this was like 2005, 2006. I'm like, this looks good. Like, I want to get a rental property. I want to start getting like my feet wet with that. So I kind of decided like, okay, I think I did a couple classes in college and was like, I'm going to instead use, I obviously didn't have the grades to get any sort of help, basically, right? I was like in that middle phase, like too good to get help and not good enough to get help. So I was like kind of right there, the sweet spot. And so I was like, it's going to be out of pocket if I'm going to school anyway. But I wanted to take that and use that as a down payment on a home. I was like, I want a rental property. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to do the school thing. I'm going to invest in real estate. I think I'm going to do really well in that. Well, no surprise here. I mentioned the year. 2006, 7, 8 rolls around, right? And that investment turns into, from being like a really cool, good investment, especially for that age. I mean, I was 18, 19 years old, to being, oh, this is the most in debt 19-year-old I've ever met, right? Like, and at that point, I just looked around for an industry that wasn't being destroyed. And I realized that aerospace, from like a non-commercial standpoint at that time, was actually still doing really good. And I'll give this disclaimer. I worked in aerospace, but I was not an astronaut. I was not a skydiver, and I was not a fighter pilot, just so everyone knows. Like, I worked behind a computer like most people in aerospace, and we focus below the atmosphere on part support and manufacturing parts. But anyway, I realized that's a good industry. So I just got in at the ground floor, and I was a part-time receiving clerk, which is code for I took out people's trash and broke down boxes. But I just got my foot in the door realizing, okay, you know what? I don't have a college degree. I have a really bad investment portfolio now, right? Like, I'm doing not well for my age. I went from doing pretty good to the worst I know. I'm just going to get into something that's stable and then I can just do my best in, right? And that's kind of my introduction to getting into aerospace. And I was there for 15 years and I worked my way up to that executive level. They did not hire me in saying, you're going to run this place, right? Like, I was a young guy, but I just showed up every day and worked. And we can get into a little bit of that, but that was kind of like the reasoning behind, like, from school to work to all that.
Well, I think it's great. First of all, it's in your backyard, right? Like, I was just in St. Augustine a few months ago, right? And I mean, I'm going down for a launch, whether that's, my boy over there, Mr. Tesla going to launch his rocket, or someone's going to launch a rocket down there.
Someone's going to.
Yeah, someone's going to. So you're like, I mean, it is in your backyard. Like, every other week, it's in the paper. Something's going on in aerospace. So it's a very interesting thing. Like, I grew up in the Great Lakes. right? And I never looked out as when I sat on the beach in Lake Michigan, like, wow, there's a job out on the water. There's ships sailing and doing all this stuff. And like to grab that, hey, this is right here. And this is a market that's always done and been evolved in your life. I think that's very insightful for a young man to like, hey, I can get in here and do well. So very cool. Now, a little less than 2 years ago, because I am all on your feeds and I follow you and you've helped me a lot and helped me in this podcast world. And you've always been a great advocate for me. I watch your post where you're like, hey man, quitting my job because I'm going to be a pod pro. So you're walking away from this aerospace engineering job to be like, hey man, I'm going to be a podcasting guy. Like, but really you're a software guy.
Yeah, really am. Yeah. And that transition, if we can talk about that for a minute, that was a tough decision because, as you know, and anyone who's been in any sort of corporate job, after 15 years and hitting an executive level, your paycheck is good and all, but it's the perks that really make it like great. So me saying, okay, I'm leaving this job was, yes, I know the paycheck, but I've got to pay my own phone bill. Like, what is that? Like my travel isn't free anymore. Like all the things, right? You're like, hold on a minute. And you start adding up the expenses. You're like, I was making a lot of money. I didn't really realize it. But it was a really tough decision. And I'm glad that you brought that post because it was December 8th, 2020 was my last day in corporate. And I will say this, my last year I was there was my best year out of the 15 years. I mean, I worked hard throughout the entire thing and I always just showed up, and that's what got me promoted again and again and again. And I wasn't even hungry for the promotion. I just showed up and did my best. And but that last year was by far my best because I believe the way you end one season is the way you begin the next. So the footing that you have as you're leaving is the footing you have when you get started. And I see too many people decide I'm out of here. They burn that bridge or they just do a terrible job. They would never get rehired. And it would just be sad. But I knew, you know what? I want my new thing in podcasting to be starting off on the right foot. So I'm going to end this one on the right foot. And so I encourage everybody, winners find a way. One way that you do that is by always ending a season faithfully, doing your best every single chance you get. And so when I made that transition from aerospace to podcasting of all things, I did on a really good foot. And I'll tell you, I launched with that momentum. Like I was encouraged, I was motivated and ready to go and working as hard as I ever had. And it's because I ended one season faithfully, I believe.
Well, what a great lesson for everybody out there, right? Because like, what I knew of you then, because you and I were interacting at that time.
Yeah.
And you still had your day job, right? And so like you're doing your side hustle is a full SaaS software gig that's got you running, 40 hours a week. Yet you also have the executive 50 hours. And I think you were either engaged or married at the time. So, you've got a young family. Like it's different than 15 years ago when you're on your own. Now I'm transitioning and I got responsibilities. I got other people. Yet you're finding this way to like, hey, I got to balance my time. I got to prioritize. I got to do all this thing. Meanwhile, what I heard you just say, Alex, and I hear a lot of people do this, they're crossing the bridge because they see the other side and going, hey, I'm moving over. Meanwhile, they're spreading their kerosene as they go. Whereas when I hit the other side, I'm going to light the match. And you're like, holy crap, what are you doing? Like, you can't do that. Like, these people all counted on you for 15 years. You got that whole side of the other side of the bridge that respects you, honors you, likes working with you. And you don't want to lose that because it's how people know you. It's not who you know, it's who knows you that count and how they know you. And so when they know you as a hard worker, they still want to encourage you and bless you and work with you and be an advocate for you, regardless of where they're at.
Yeah, 100%. You know how I know I left on a good foot? It was actually earlier this year, so 2022. And I got called by that company, the aerospace company, because a 30+ year guy was retiring. And they asked and I knew him. They asked if I come speak at him leaving in front of the whole company. I was like, man, that's so cool. Like, clearly I left on good terms. If I left on any bad term, then I'd be like, ooh, don't bring that guy back in the building, right? But I got invited to go back and do that. And that was just a really cool thing. And I just think it's so important because you never know when those connections might lead to something. I'm not saying do it for the motive of, ooh, what am I going to get out of this later? But the truth is, if you leave every relationship, every job, every area of your life in a good term, you never have to be like watching your back for what's going to happen to you. You just know, if I turn back around, these guys are here. They love me. Like they can speak to my integrity or my character, right? And I just think it's so important to have that everywhere that you are. So for me, I've learned just to be as true as I can, to work as hard as I can, to always be myself, and to make sure I'm loving people along the way. I know that's kind of like a huge life lesson there, but just by doing that along the way, it's made this transition for me a lot easier, going from a big corporate guy to a full-time software entrepreneur.
Yeah. podpros.com, right? And the name of your show is
Podcasting Made Simple. Everything I do is podcasting, like I said. Even a podcast about podcasting. It doesn't get any messier than that.
Yeah, okay. Hey, this I love that, because most people I meet are way out here and they're trying to get here, right? And so I love that you're tight, right? I think
Appreciate
that's
that.
very important. So here's one thing that, kind of coming back to this hard work of who you are, right? What's one thing that most people don't know about you that you took on in your life that probably other people think about this and go, oh, heck no, man, I'm not doing this thing. Like, talk to me about one thing you ventured into your life that said, like, hey, man, I need this for me, and I'm going to give this thing a shot.
Well, I'm going to make this story short, but it is kind of a long story, but I'm going to shorten up as much as I can. When I made the transition from corporate to being a full-time entrepreneur, that also means working from home. I used to wear a full suit every single day. And then one day, me and my co-founder are sitting in my office at my place, and I look there's a mirror right there. I look at him, looking at myself. I'm wearing a red shirt, green shorts, and yellow socks. And I literally, I just looked in the mirror. I said, the mighty have fallen. He's like, what? I'm like, I used to wear a suit every single day. What the heck am I doing? And I just realized when I had the structure of a corporate job that a lot of people take for granted, I knew right when I left work, I brought a change of clothes straight into the gym. An hour later, I'm home. I'm having dinner. The rest of the night is for me and my wife, right? Like I knew that was kind of the flow of it. But now it was kind of like, well, no one's going to tell me when to wake up, right? Like there's all these things. And again, to make the long story short, I decided to do something for myself from a workout perspective to build some stability. So every day from noon to 1, I decided I'm going to do an outdoor workout. And again, we've talked, I'm in Florida. So that's an easy decision during winters when it's like 60 to 70 degrees outside with a nice cool breeze. But when when it's 105 degrees and you're working out outside. But anyway, I decided to bite off a competition, because for me, there needs to be some structure about it. I can't just be like, I'm going to work out. No, I decided to do a Murph challenge, which for anyone who doesn't know, you wear a 20-pound vest the entire workout. You do a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, another mile run. That is like the Murph challenge workout, which is technically like a CrossFit style workout. And I decided, I'm going to compete in this. I'm going to see how I can get my time down. So I just did it every day. And like at first, I didn't get through it. I got through like 1/3 of it in an hour, and I went back to work, right? And then I got to kept on working my way up. Eventually, this is kind of like my claim to fame when it comes to working out. I finished it in under 40 minutes. And when I looked at the actual Murph Challenge, like official leaderboard, I was in the top 100 of all RX finishers, like globally. And to me, I beat people who make it to the CrossFit Games. And for me, a software guy taking an hour a day to learn how to do this, that was like a really big accomplishment. I haven't shared it too much. So it was cool to actually tell that story. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm bragging or anything like that. But for me, it was just like, hey, I did this. Like I feel healthier than I've ever felt, and I got something out of it. So it was a really cool experience for me.
That's so awesome. It's a tough event, man. Like, oh
my gosh,
I know many people have tried and gone, what the heck was I thinking, man? Like this isn't what I signed on for.
I'd be lying if the halfway through the workout and that wasn't my feeling. I didn't stop, but that was my feeling.
No, I know a lot of people don't finish.
Right.
I mean, and you go in there, hey, yeah, like mindset, everything ready for it. So let's talk a little bit about some of these challenges along the way. I love the quote from the 4 disciplines of execution. Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win. And man, I'm a sports guy. That's been my whole life, man. Like, hey, you gotta make the adaptation. Let's have some things we can adapt to. If this happens, let's be prepared and have these other skill sets available. Or have these other team members available. Like, how are we gonna do that? And so let's talk a little bit about that. What's one of the challenges that you faced along the way? You were like, man, this is not going the right direction, man. Like, should I really be doing? I mean, you've already brought up one with the real estate, right? Like, you're thinking like, oh, it's always going to be this good. I'm going to make millions, and then all of a sudden you get an 08, 09, right?
Right.
So walk me through a couple, maybe a specific scenario that you walked through in your life.
Yeah. First off, I am going to go mindset here, because starting at a young age, when my mom was explaining to me, hey, you're struggling with dyslexia, right? You have a problem. Like, I immediately gathered this mindset of, oh man, like I'm a problem, right? And then fast forward to some real estate stuff, right? Like I more or less was a failure once again, right? Like, and I don't mean that about myself. I've never believed that about myself, but at that moment I failed. And at that young age, that was those things really negatively impacted me. So I kind of carried into my adult life, even going into aerospace, like working really hard, but not just because I'm a hard worker, but also I felt like I had to prove something. And that was subconscious. At that age, I wouldn't have known that, but I had a bit of an ego. And actually, when the tough challenge I'll mention is, let's just talk about that whole transition. I went from being a guy who I remember I was like, I think it was at a dentist appointment, and there was a magazine, it was Forbes, and it said 30 under 30. And I just remember picking it up, This is back when people didn't have smartphones like that handy. So I looked at a magazine, I picked it up, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I want to be a Forbes 30 under 30. Like, I want to do this. And at that time I decided, you know what? I'm not going to let the failure hold on to me. I'm going to become this. But I developed this really strong sense of ego because I never dealt with the actual issues or the pain. I just masked it with, I'm going to become really successful financially and do really good and make this list. Right. And so that's when I invested in real estate, thinking that would be my vehicle for getting there. And I just started surrounding myself with some wrong people, including relationships. Like I was dating a girl who, as soon as the money disappeared, so did she, right? Like, and that makes sense. And a lot of the friends, they were there until they're like, "Ooh, he's not doing good. I don't want to have any deep conversation about how he is," right? And man, I had that realization. I was probably just starting the real estate job. And here's the thing, like being a guy who thinks I'm making Forbes 30 under 30 to taking out people's trash and breaking down boxes on a part-time basis. Like, yes, I knew I could do well in that organization. I did, thankfully. But at that age, that's like the ultimate feeling of defeat of like, shoot, like here I am. I don't have any money for school because I blew it all on something that didn't work out. And now I'm working a part-time job taking out trash for people. And there's humble beginnings. It's great. But man, that really messed me up. And I'll say this, the thing that really helped me get through it is I got a flyer in the mail one day. Again, this is when we checked physical mail. So like I had an actual like letter, and it was like a young adults ministry at a church. And at this point, man, like I wasn't in church or anything like that. I did grow up in like a home with believers. But I just was like, you know what, maybe I'll give this a shot because I literally have no friends. I'm not in a relationship anymore. Maybe I'll go check this out. And I went, but I remember even walking in, like I've always been a bit of an extrovert, but like I didn't want to talk to anybody because I didn't want them to know how much of a failure I was. And that was my actual feeling in that moment. I remember walking in and people actually like introducing themselves to me. And I realized I'm like, wow, they actually don't care that like I've made mistakes. Like, not that they didn't care about me, but they just didn't care I had made mistakes. And I started like really, first off, finding my relationship with Jesus, which to me is the foundation of my life. Like that's when I really started getting healing and freed from this feeling of being a failure along the way. But also I found some of the most meaningful relationships in my life. And still to this day, some of my best friends were people that I met in that time. And to me, from a psychological, like personality perspective, like I've done a full 180 of coming from somebody who's like, all these failures are going to hold me back my whole life to, no, I'm going to find a way, like winners find a way, right? I'm going to find a way to still make the most out of my life and live it at the fullest, ultimately for God, but also so I have a life that I really enjoy. And that's kind of like that whole journey that I'll share with you there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's so evident now if you look back on the things you learned in these surrounding these people who were like, hey, I got a foundation. These are things. Why would we accept people in our life that aren't treating us well or are only here for the money? Or, and we see it, in the back of our mind. I think we've all had those friends going, are they really in it for the long haul? Or are they in it for the good time right now because it's all good? And it's just the person I'm really going in the foxhole with. And you discover that through these trials of who those people are and who they're not, right? And so, and then your meter goes up too, right? You get that BS meter.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, wait a minute, man. Like, wait, what do you stand for and what do you believe in? And people are like, well, I don't know, a couple brands that I wear, and you're like, wait a minute, man, hold on. Like,
right.
So it's interesting how we develop people. So as you go through this, talk to me about for people that are out there right now, Alex. You got people that it's post pandemic, small business has been shut down left and right. People call you probably every day, going, man, I think I could be someone on this podcast. I think I got something to say. How do I do it? And I'm struggling, and I want something different in my life. What would you tell someone in that situation today?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I always tell people is you've got to show up and be transparent. You can't show up and try to put on this facade of like, oh, I've always done well. Like what I'm sharing on this episode with you, I've basically probably never shared half this stuff because it just hasn't come up. But now that it's come up, I didn't try to hide any of it. I wasn't like I was homeschooled because I was a super smart kid, and like I could have just lied about that, right? Like I was like your oldest son, like I was just like that, right? No, like that wasn't the case, and I'm not going to BS my way through it because here's the thing: people are looking for in podcasts, especially listeners, they're looking for an authentic conversation, and more than ever, people are getting. I mean, the human mind is evolving. People can smell BS from a mile away. They can hear it from a mile away, right? They can listen to it and be like, I don't know about this guy, right? There's a red flag there. I don't want to be that. And I think that the best thing that I can tell others is don't be that yourself either. When you're showing up on podcasting on either side of the mic, be yourself, be transparent with you where you are, because people go on journeys. Like our life is a journey ultimately. And if they feel like you've already hit the peak pinnacle of all things, right? You're not taking them with you. They're just trying to catch up to you. And that only lasts so long. But if you're saying, here I am, and I'm going to try to get to here, who wants to go with me? Right? With your story. Like, so I'm at this low point, but I'm going to try to get like midway, and we'll just kind of walk this journey together. When people hear that development on either side of the mic, that is the best way to show up. And that really resonates with people, because ultimately podcasting, my mind is about developing know, like, and trust with people. And people like to go on journeys with people they know, like, and trust. And they want to be able to feel that sense of connection with somebody. So that's kind of where I tell people to get started. Like on either side of the mic, whether you're the host or the guest, make sure you're transferring that place of sharing from that place of true authenticity, that you're really just showing up 100% yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing, man. Like I think people struggle with that, especially at a young age. I struggled with that a lot because I wanted to be something I wasn't, and I wanted to have it now, right? Like I want to be in the World Series tomorrow, right? And I want everyone to see me as a big deal, and I wasn't a big deal. I'm still not a big deal, and I think I wanted that for the wrong reasons. And I like to tell, I speak to a lot of kids, and I tell them, like, hey, man, no mistake was made when they made you. Like, you're perfect. And we see these flaws in ourselves and go, oh, man, I wish I had this like Alex has. And, like, hey, you're perfect and it's not wrong. It's going to serve you in some way, just like, that learning disability young age served you on how you work through it, how you learn to overcome, how you come across those challenges. And the other thing I tell a lot of people is about authenticity. Is like, hey, man, if you don't like you, I don't know if you're going to expect other people to like you.
Yeah,
like, you got to be the best you that you can be, because no one else is replacing you. I can't be Alex. Alex can't be Trent. That's not going to work.
What you said there is just so important. I think that we have to be comfortable with who we are. And here's the thing, if you want to be a winner, like, you have to be yourself and just own where you've come from. And just like you're saying, like, understand that the journey has molded you to who you are. Here's the thing. If I was naturally really good at school and everything my whole life, and let's just imagine real estate didn't crash, I ended up being really successful, I'd have a terrible ego, but also I wouldn't be have developed the working skills I need to. I would have never started a company because I wouldn't have been willing to say, okay, I have to wake up at 7 o'clock, even though no one's telling me to, right? So I can get to the grind, so I can make it happen, until you can like build some systems around it, and then it's no longer a grind, right? But like those things, that just comes from development and owning your journey along the way. And I think a big part of that really is reflecting, to know that, like, to look back and basically say, hey, this is who I am. Like, this is my journey. It would say who I am, but ultimately I understand that I am a winner, and I am going to find a way to continue to drive forward using everything at my advantage that I've had in my life. And I'm just going to share that with everybody. I think that when you show up that way, again, podcast, anything you do, that goes further than any form of sales tactics. That goes so far, because you really are someone who's showing, I am going somewhere, no matter what shortcomings I've had along the way, no matter what's potentially held me back, I'm still pressing on and going. And I just think that's the most beautiful way to show up. Those are the people that I try to surround myself with over any other form of person.
Yeah, I think one of the values of our show, and I saw this in pro sports, right, is it's hyper learning. I bring in the best people in the world who know something that, of course, I don't know, right?
Right.
And I don't have your experiences, right, Alex? Like, I didn't go what you went through, right? I didn't have the learning disabilities. I never did the Murph challenge. I didn't, I wasn't homeschooled, like all these things. And so you bring these experiences of people that came along, and all these years, whether you appreciate it, whether you don't, you had 15 years of all these aerospace people around you, which, by the way, if you don't know, we always talk about, like, well, I'm no rocket science. He actually went to work as rocket scientists every day, right?
Right.
And so you actually have these people who are like brilliant, right? And so you get all this information, you get these experience shares and how great organizations do this really well is they go, hey, I got an Alex, I got a Diana, I got a Trisha, I got a Buktar, I got a this. And like, they all come from different cultures, different environments, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And they go, man, this is what I learned along the way. And we all grab that and learn that, like, watch out, like, things are going to happen. It's awesome.
Yeah. I found that to be so true, man. Like, just the different journeys, different people. When you get that type of people together, like in a boardroom or something like that, man, it is powerful, because like I only know from my experience, and all of us have some form of limiting beliefs. So like when I'm sharing something in a boardroom, like, I don't think this is possible, I don't think we can do it. And I learned to not say those words anymore, because someone else in the room is like, actually, when I was growing up, we did this, this, and this. And I think if we applied the same sort of tech to this, we could actually do it. I'm like, oh shoot, this person's right. But there's something beautiful about like that diversity in a room, that just like, and the different cultures, different backgrounds, everyone, you bring the right minds in there of an abundance mindset of, we are going to find a way to do this. Man, I remember, like, I was in one group We called it CTU, but it doesn't stand for what most people think it does. Not in our organization. But I love that meeting because it was a group of very like diverse backgrounds. This is a small group, but I will tell you what, it was the integrators in the company. These are the people that were going to drive it forward. And together, like we might have some like little heated conversations, but we'd always leave there. And 2 weeks later, something in the company was happening better than it was before it. So I'm with, man, that is such a powerful thing. I remember that's like one of the things I absolutely loved about that company, just being in business. It was fun to be in that room with people.
Awesome. Let's go. I want to dive in a little bit back to this mindset. This is so important for people that are out there. And this is one of the things I want to address into the challenge of if you're facing it today. Um, the past doesn't define the future, right? So I want to talk a little bit about like you've been through some challenges in the past. And so if I looked at my real past of things like I'm shameful about, I feel guilt, I feel resonance about, man, they were brief moments, and there's probably 5 to 10 of them. Like I've had millions of moments in my lifetime, but I'm gonna let 7 things define my life. That listen, I do have regret. Like I would love to go back and say, hey, I wish you weren't such a schmuck at that time, Trent. Made a lot better decisions of how you would have treated somebody or how you could have done that differently. But should I let that moment that happened 31 years ago define who I am today? So walk
Yeah,
me through how
yeah.
you did allow that to happen.
Absolutely not. And like I said, for a while, like I did let that start happening. And then at thankfully a young age, like I found that relationship with Jesus. It really helped me a lot. And since then, man, I've been on this self-development, just journey. And so like, I journal every single morning. I spend intentional time diving into areas that I think there might be an issue. And I'm not necessarily looking for the bad things, but I'm looking for healing in that. And here's why I do that. Because again, the way I show up on podcast is going to directly reflect my mental health, like my internal self, right? Like that is ultimately what's going to be reflective if I'm being authentic and transparent. Same with my business, the way I show up to lead it. I'm going to, like, if I'm always worried about, oh man, but I failed before, so maybe I shouldn't lead this, or I can't tell my teams what to do because I've just made so many mistakes. No, I've got to work that stuff out. So like you're saying, those 7 things, or for me, maybe it's like, I don't know, 10, 12, right? Of those moments, even though you don't remember the other million, you just remember those few. That's there's a lesson there, right? But I just dive into those and I really go after them and I seek that healing. And sometimes I meet with coaches to do that because I want to make sure that, hey, I am on this self-mastery journey so that when I show up for the people that I'm serving, whether that be my family, the people that are trusting me with their wallets, right? The members of the PodPros organization, I want to show up being 100% whole, not with this weight of like my past on it, right? So I've learned to let those things go, again, through self-reflection, through coaching and those things. I think it's such an important process for everyone to go through. It's self-mastery. Like in many ways, it's such small things. People are like, why would you even try to uncover that? I'm like, because I want to be fully whole for the people I'm showing up to serve.
Yeah,
And so I think it's important to do.
I think that's huge. A great plug for the counselors and people that are licensed in the world to come and help. Because as we look out at our world today, like there's people out there that are going to help you. Like you want to walk through this. And what I learned about going through some hard things in my childhood was like, hey man, you don't need to relive it, but you might need to revisit it and dive through some things about these things, right? Because reliving it takes you into the depression. It takes you into it gets you back into that funk and back into that fear or terror or whatever you've gone through. And so, but revisiting it is like, hey, how's this affected me? What happened through that? Why did I think this way? Hey, reason why maybe you thought incorrectly about that is because you were 6 years old when you're having your brain wasn't formed ready
Right.
to think right about that. So
Right.
you got some wrong input at a time where you couldn't process that input. So guess what? Some wires crossed at that time, and now let this counselor kind of, hey, let me rewire you a little bit. Let me get that software back online because there's a little bit of time, and there's some professionals out there that'll help you. So I always encourage people to get out there and do that. Let's finish up here a little bit. I know we got to run here, but man, I ask a lot of people like, how you doing? And they're always like, living the dream, man. And, like I got a chance to do that, right? I got a chance to go to 3 World Series. I was the
Yeah.
kid
Oh
running
yeah.
around my backyard and hitting the wiffle ball, like, bottom of the ninth, Clark's up, I didn't play in any World Series because I wasn't that good. And they gave me that you'd make a good coach talk, which is
Right.
job
Yeah.
transition,
Well,
right?
you clearly did. So that's
Yeah.
good.
So but I looked out and like, man, these are people actually living the dream. And you've told me that, I mean, genuine and authentically, like, hey man, I am absolutely living my dream of what I want to. Walk me through like why that's so valuable to you today.
Yeah, so my career in corporate was good. But I knew that being an entrepreneur was just in my blood. I could feel it there. I loved podcasting, and that would have been great. And most people just say, I'm okay with good, right? Like it's comfortable. I'm okay. And that word comfort there is what we always have to stretch. And for me, I realized that, you know what? I want to sacrifice the good for the sake of the potential great. Like I didn't know that what I was going to do was going to work. And thankfully, we're doing very well. It's become very successful. I'm thankful for that. But it was a calculated risk of, you know what? Here's what I have today, and it's good, but here's where great is. And I'm just going to fill in the gap of what could happen. And I'm going to take that calculated risk. And so I just encourage people. This is like the journey I went on. And now I'm so thankful for my life is, but decide for yourself, like, where is it that you want to go? Like reflect, think about that, like dream, and then say, okay, what are the steps I need to take to get there, to make my life really look this way? And then start going after it. And it's all micro steps. Like I that transition of going from corporate to entrepreneurship wasn't like the flip of a switch. I mean, it was over years that it took me to be able to do this. Like I was building the company. I didn't like quit and then start the company. I had already started. I was doing both things. And I think that the quote that I know has been shared in this podcast before, but I think that really holds true is Jerry Rice saying that today I'll do what others can't, so tomorrow I'll have what they can't. Like, or today I'll do what they won't, so tomorrow I can have what they can't. And I just think so many of us, we need to make those small steps every day to get closer to what great looks like in our lives and be willing to sacrifice the good. And again, for me, that has been the journey that I've been on. I'm thankful that my life and what I do for work is very fulfilling, and I consider it great.
Yeah, it is great. I mean, it is great. So check out podpros.com. Alex Sanfilippo, believe it. Alex, tell them where they can find you again real quick.
Yeah, podpros.com. Everything I do is there. I'd love to hear from anybody. So you can find ways to contact me, and I'm very accessible. So I'd love to have a conversation with anybody here. But Trent, thank you so much for what you do here with Winners Find a Way. This has been a great podcast for me to listen to, and truly an honor to be here with you today.
You bet. And your show,
Podcasting Made Simple. It's on podpros.com. You are going to find it real easily.
That's easy. Podcasting Made Simple. Love it. Alex, thank you so much. I'm thinking about this one. I thought about your life, the homeschool, the this or that, man. Taking the risk, right? Can't steal second with your foot on first. That was my quote thinking about you, man. Like, listen, always willing to go and say, hey, listen, let's go and find out. I think I can make it. And you know what? If I get called out, I'm going to get another at bat. I'll be there again. You know, I'll step up to the plate and take another challenge. So proud of you, Alex. Thanks for coming along, man. And for everybody out there, Winners Find a Way. Check us out every Friday, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific on the YouTube channel. You can find us all in the big podcast, Refined program, out on Apple, Spotify, and all the major brands. So check us out there. Till next time, Winners Find a Way. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks again.